All right, welcome back, everyone. We wanted to talk about Lost in Translation again, but this time we wanted to go the full Japanese expat experience. So we brought back my friend, my frequent guest, Mike Nikolakakis, who is knee deep in the Japanese expat experience now, right? How many years have you been there now?
Going on 3, man. I feel like I'm neck deep now, right? Is that how that works? What's the time frame?
Yeah, I mean it sounds about right. I've already left after a year, so you're way more of a veteran than I am. But
Yeah,
we had a great time when I was there. Thanks for showing me the ropes, and I
I think I
wanted
mostly put up with you. I don't know if I had a good time, but yeah.
yeah, very patient. You're very patient with me, going through all the same, like, whoa, look at that. My first hidden bar. Wow, cool. And you're probably like, all right, okay, yeah, it's been, whatever, it's my 200th time here. But anyways, I wanted to bring you back because, I had Trung and Deirdre on my podcast last time, and we talked about the Asian expat experience, which is great. That was great. But I wanted to do a little, a version of a mini version of the pod, just to talk about Japan, what it means to live in Japan, because I do think that experience is quite unique outside of Asia in general. And I'll give a little bit of a reason why before you jump in about your thoughts on the movie. I think part of that is, you know, Japan is still a quite insular culture, still prides itself on its uniqueness and its preservation of its tradition, which is mostly, on the grand scheme of things, a positive, net positive. And while other parts of Asia, namely Hong Kong and Singapore, which are two of the places that my other two guests have been to, they're almost Asia 101. They speak a lot of English there. Expat life can be lived in, as an English-speaking expat, you can probably live there and not change your life too much, while Japan forces you to adapt to their culture at least a little bit. So we'll get into that a little bit. But before that, let's talk about the movie itself, Mike. So I've already given my thoughts. You can listen to them on the episode of Lost in Translation that I did before, and also my Substack and my writing there on electricdreams.substack.com. But Mike, why don't we listen to your thoughts on Lost in Translation? What did you think about it watching it now after you lived in Japan for 3 years?
Yeah, so Lost in Translation. Man, it's one of my favorite films, to be honest with you. I don't remember if I watched it before or after I moved to Japan. I want to say it was actually after I moved here. And I think for me, the film really like captures a lot of the feeling that you have initially when you first arrive very, very well. But even after being here for as long as I have, so almost 3 years now, yeah, I think it still really kind of conveys a lot of the feelings you get just being an expat or being a non-Japanese person in Tokyo. Again, I think the film as a whole is done really, really well. I think the first time I watched it and then watching it more recently again in preparation for the podcast, there's a few things that actually kind of stood out this time around that I felt were a little bit insensitive.
Yeah.
And so I didn't really pick up on those before. And a couple examples are how, if you watch the movie, like Bill Murray actually can be a little bit of a dick at times.
Right.
In terms of, and I think a lot of expats actually do this, and it's kind of something that's like a bit of a pet peeve after you've been here a while, where there's the expectation that everyone should just understand you because you speak English, etc. So going back to what you were saying before, Japan is a very insular country, and they're very protective of like their ways of doing things and their culture as a whole. So
No, I think you're right. Some expats are like Bill Murray. Like they can keep that mindset of like, why don't you know who I am? Why don't you
yeah,
just like let me operate as if I'm in LA for years, And if you think about the expats that you've met and I've met, some of them will try to go full native, right? And some
yeah,
of them will try to just kind of operate in their little Roppongi, Omotesando kind of bubble, which is if people who don't know, that's near the U.S. Embassy, and that's has more amenities that are more welcoming to English-speaking people and Americans, supermarkets and nightlife and etc. But it's not like the rest of Japan or Tokyo at all. And there's also a lot of very other kinds of expats. You also have like younger college students, mostly, who come here to become English teachers. I kind of admire the mid-20s to late 20s people who come here, who came here a little younger than I did, and really take that risk when they're still kind of newer in their career, but have a little bit idea what they want to do, and move all the way from America or just the West, like Canada or anywhere in Europe in general, and start a life here. I kind of wish I did that back when I was in maybe 27, 28, and I'm glad you did, Mike.
Yeah, no, I am too. I think the experience as a whole has been really enriching for me personally, and I think I've learned a lot about myself. In terms of like the expats, like you were saying, I think there's just so many different types, and it's kind of funny too if you look at the evolution of not only yourself but the expat as a whole. Yeah. You kind of go from, I think even myself, maybe in the beginning, I would get really a little more frustrated, easily frustrated at things early on because of just the fact that they were so different, and I was kind of expecting them to be more like home, and it's not home. And so it's something you have to remind yourself of. Yeah. But then even over time, like you said, the people that go kind of becoming quote unquote full native, there's a bit of an arrogance to some of those people too. Like, right. So let's say you're new in Tokyo and you meet somebody that's been here for 10 years. Sometimes they might kind of like put you down for wanting to do things that are kind of the touristy thing at first, like Golden Guy or something like that. Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, that's what everybody does, but it's not that cool.
Yeah, it's kind of like the seniors versus the freshmen, like.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, they're like looking down at the freshmen who are excited about homecoming or whatever. But yeah, that makes sense. It is, and I can already picture some people that we both know. Some of them who can speak fluent Japanese, they're really integrated. They tried hard, and that's great. It's admirable, and it's really important to try to understand and be integrated in the culture. But like, they do hold it above your head a lot.
Yeah,
they do. That pisses me off. Other people that we both know that are pretty integrated, but are more humble about it. That's more remarkable for me. So it's good that you pointed out that difference. But why don't you tell me a little bit about your mentality for coming to Japan, and like, do you think the mentality that you brought here to Japan, is that still the mentality that you hold today? Like, is it the same reasons that you came here, the same reasons that you continue to be here, or how has that changed your life goals too? Deep questions.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a heavy question. Man, how do I approach this one? Thinking back to 3 years ago when I first came here, I think my expectations were. I think Japan met my expectations. I think when I came in, I was very excited, and I think Japan, for a lot of people, especially coming from America and from the West, it can be glorified a bit. I think we talked about it before on our previous podcast, but it's like it's seen as a utopia. It's seen as a very efficient place. It's almost seen as like a futuristic type place. Yeah. And so like you come here and you do see a lot of that stuff, and at first you're like, oh yeah, this is true. This is what I had envisioned. But then over time, you also start to uncover like some of the bureaucratic process and the very rule-driven things that you must do. Like there's always a process to everything. You can't really step out of bounds on those things. Right. And I think that stuff can get frustrating over time. Whereas like, again, being an American, I think we think about things differently in terms of like, oh, well, this process does work, but it could maybe be improved or changed or like made easier for everyone. I think a good example of this is just any of the residential paperwork that you have to do and everything that you have to do in terms of like moving and like let the government know where you live. It's such a process, and you can't do any of it online. You have to go in person. You have to wait in line and take a ticket, like very old school, as if you're at the DMV. And so like that stuff can get really frustrating over time. Yeah. But yeah, I think as a whole, I think what really has changed in terms of my experience and how I look at things now, I think it also is a humbling thing, because that stuff is very difficult, and you can get frustrated. But when you do complete it and you're able to get through those things, you do feel a very big sense of accomplishment.
Totally.
And I think over time, I think for me, when I first moved here, I was 27. I think I was still trying to figure some things out with myself, and I think going through those experiences and having to rely on myself very heavily to get through this stuff really kind of solidifies who you are to you. Like, you kind of get to know yourself a lot better. You feel confident about what you can do and who you are. And so I think that as a whole, and for me, like, Japan as an experience has been really, really good.
I totally agree with you. Like, once you start hitting once the first Japanese face of bureaucracy tells you, I'm sorry, this is just how it's done, then you started to really get into the expat experience.
Yeah.
But then I think, I love to rag on it. I love to rag on the whole, and I just had an experience with my bank there. Like, they wouldn't
It's
let
easy to
me
get frustrated and rag on it, for sure.
Yeah, they wouldn't let me transfer money to the people that I need to pay to move my stuff out of the country, because I told them just offhand, hey, I'm like not going to be here. I'm going to be in the country. And they're like, well, you're not a resident anymore. Just let me pay these people. Okay, just let me pay these people and get out of your face. But anyways, there is, I don't know, maybe it's a little bit of a reach, but I kind of feel like the counter to that is there's elements of culture in Tokyo, and I can only speak about Tokyo because I haven't lived anywhere else in Japan. That is, one, focused on like the neighborhood and the community, on like the local community, and also on like lack of needing to scale everything and making and lack of desire for clout and like fame and making it big, like that ravenous hunger that I always see in America, that's like infused in everything we do. It isn't always around in Japan. And like what I think about for this is, we go to a lot of cool places, and we'll talk about a few of them in a second. And I think you mentioned this before, like, they don't necessarily want to be the hottest bar or club in Tokyo. They don't want to be the artists that maybe they're DJ or they're like live painting. They're just trying to make a living, interact with their community, and just hang out and make something cool, rather than be, 130, 100, be like just some really famous artist that blows up on social media, blah, blah, blah. Which I think kind of is, in my opinion, tied to that like same mentality of maybe tradition, or just kind of like framework of living, where it's not about, because when I go back to America, I remember this so clearly. When I had moved to Japan, I've been there for maybe 6 months. I came back to America for work, going back to Seattle, and I was just like, everything felt so chaotic in America. Like, there's a lot of possibilities. You can do anything you want, but also it's like, it just felt like everything was wild. And I think if you are able to really dig into the local experiences in Tokyo, you can see some of the positive sides of that kind of framework. So just some food for thought. But I'm interested. Yeah. So you shared a little bit about your expat experiences. You were still a little bit more open, it sounds like, to who you're going to be. You're 27, you're still a young man, and now you've gone through some more stuff. And do you feel a little bit more settled about your identity, you think? Has Tokyo helped you find that?
Yeah, definitely. I think so. I mean, you kind of talked about it earlier too. There's this idea of like escaping, and when you come here, I think there's just so much to explore, so much to do, so much that is new, so much that is unknown, that it really kind of helps you. That desire to want to discover and do new things and try things is greater, and so I think a lot of that helps you start to realize what you do like, what you don't like, what you really identify as like who you are. And I think over time that really helped like solidify who I think I am now today. Like, I'm definitely, I think, a very different person than I was when I first moved here. I think too, like, a couple other things for me personally I'm a white man from America.
Yeah.
I think coming to a place like Japan that is very homogenous, I think the population is 97% Japanese. I don't know exactly what it is in Tokyo, but walking around the street, you most often are the only non-Japanese person walking around. And so I think for me, like even early on, that experience was a bit jarring for me. And I actually had a hard time adjusting at first because there is this sense of always sticking out that I had never personally had to experience before.
Yeah.
And so, you do feel people looking at you, staring at you, you look different. You also, when you're new here, you're kind of learning the quote unquote unspoken rules of Japan, which there are very, very many of. And so I think all of those things kind of culminates in making you feel very awkward and weird and somewhat isolated, which the movie itself also really does a great job of kind of capturing.
Yeah.
That sense of isolation. And so I think that part helps you also evolve over time and like really become at least for me, I felt like I became a lot more introspective, trying to like ask myself questions and understand and going up. We talked about it in our previous podcast, but even going back to things like the Black Lives Matter movement and what's going on in the political climate with America, I think especially for me being a white man, it's really important to have that introspective approach and kind of think about things over time and understanding what it does mean to be a minority. And when I say that, I'm not ever trying to say that I actually can relate to what it means to be a minority in America, but I think it does help me understand a bit more.
Totally.
Yeah.
No, I first, you've already couched it. You already understand it's not the same, but I would say it is definitely a very valuable experience for you to feel like you're not look the same. And I know from hanging out with you a lot, like you're very, very aware that you're probably breaking some traditional rule, but you're trying your best and you try to communicate that as politely and as you can, which I think is great. And I have the counter to your experience, which was I felt for the first time as the majority in a place where I've always felt like a minority, even though I don't speak the language very well, but I look kind of Japanese, especially with the facial hair. And before I open my mouth, people will just basically let me blend in. Like I can just, I remember you sent me, I think, an article, you and one of our South Asian friends, Deep, shout out to Deep, about like the lonely empty seat next to, the lonely empty seat next to me on the train or something like that. And it was about how being an expat, and I think this was written by a black man, like people will just not sit next to you on the train, and you said you guys both identify with that, and I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, because people just sit next, they don't look at me any different. So
they don't really bat an eye for you, whereas like for me or for Deep, and I think even for Deep, I think his experience is probably very different than mine. I mean, it's definitely noticeable when people, if there's a seat next to me, it's gonna be the last seat taken if there's nothing else available, typically. But that said, I think I think being a white man in Japan, it's also like the model minority type of situation. Okay. So at least that's kind of how I see it. Or I'm trying to make sure I don't offend anyone. But
no, tell me more. I think let's hear it. You're not offending anyone right now.
Yeah, well, I think I mean, so Deep is Indian, I think, and he's got a darker complexion than me. I think, if I were Indian or even black in Japan, I would hypothesize my experience could be a bit different. I don't know that for a fact. I don't want to try to say that I do know that. But I think there is probably some sort of model minority standard. I think being white, I probably get more of a pass in some situations than maybe I would if I were different. But so I don't know. But I think the minority experience as a whole has been really enlightening for me. I think it is really important to try to understand what that does feel like. And again, it is really difficult at first. You're just like, man, why does everyone keep staring at me? Why does no one want to sit by me? Do I smell? Do I like what's going on?
Interesting. Anecdotally, I think we can confirm that a few of our, not only Deep, some of our other friends have said that they've been treated differently, I think. And model minority, I never thought about that. That's interesting. Well, I guess without knowing a lot of the racial like relations history of Tokyo.
Yeah.
I can't really compare that to like how Asian Americans are treated in America, but
Yeah, true.
it is. I've definitely seen memes where it's like the racial hierarchy of Japan, and it's like Japanese people, and it's like white people like expats and stuff, and then it's like pets and dogs, and then it's like other Asian people. Anyways, well, we may have to cut that part out, but yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, you definitely. I wouldn't say you're given you're not dealt the shittiest hand in the deck by being white coming here, but you're definitely dealt a different experience than being white in America or in any Western country.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess I think that's a great experience that you've had, a great experience that will help you for the rest of your life. On my side, I wasn't able to get that type of experience, but what I did get was, I came for, and I think I talked about this a little bit in the last podcast, wrote about this a little bit, but I came because I had a lot of interest in the culture. I've just had I'm Taiwanese-American, and we have an interesting relationship with Japan, right? So Japan occupied Taiwan in the early 20th century, and that largely is seen as favorable by a lot of Taiwanese people because they had a lot of resources. Japan had a lot of resources, so their infrastructure was created or kind of improved, and Taiwanese people were seen as Japanese citizens, although not on the same par as Japanese ethnically Japanese person. So people kind of strove to be Japanese, especially I think famously the first president of Taiwan, who just recently passed away, Li Denghui, he considered himself a Japanese citizen. And then World War II happened. Japanese gave Taiwan back to China. You can find a little bit fault in the words I use there, but broadly speaking, that's what happened. And the Nationalist Party that came in, there was a lot more jarring conflict between like this government of Japan that left and then the government that came in. There was a lot of differences in capabilities and resources, and there's a whole history behind that. But Taiwan is kind of seen as, I would say, one of the bastions of more traditional Chinese culture at this point. Okay, so as a Taiwanese American, at one point my parents were telling me, "Don't forget about what Japan did to China in World War II. A lot of bad stuff happened. Nanjing, a lot of things you can look into that more. A lot of that stuff Japan still hasn't really fully acknowledged. On the other hand, there's a bit of Taiwanese culture that's saying, okay, well, Japan has done, has done some stuff that's been good for Taiwan as a country, and also Japanese goods, their culture, their products are seen, and their food are all seen as high quality stuff as well. So, long story short, I came to Japan with this mindset, like, oh man, I've loved their art, I love their literature, their food. I want to explore all this stuff. But at the back of my head, there's always this little bit of like, oh man, but it's kind of weird to love Japan and also be so aware of your Chinese heritage.
Oh, I was just gonna say. I mean, I think it makes sense. It's tough, right? Like it's conflicting. But even as an American, I think our history is not great either. And
True.
I think you can know about it and you can be upset about what has happened in the past. But at the same time, like I still am proud of being an American, and I do love like America. Although things right now don't look great. Like I still think the opportunities I've had because of where I came from have really benefited me.
Yeah.
And so like I can understand, I guess, like why that feels conflicting.
Yeah, but I still was really excited to be in Tokyo. But there's parts that there's things about me, about my identity that I hadn't figured out yet. And that was like, I honestly, part of what I came to Tokyo was worked in Amazon for 4 years, 3+ at that point, and I wanted to stay there, partially because my stock was vesting, and I wanted to, make sure I hit that vest, which is like a big, yeah, it's a big milestone. It's a lot of stock, and I wanted to make sure I hit that, but I was really bored in my old job, and people there in my old job were really nice people, but I just wasn't getting fulfilled. So I found this job, and I was prepared to, I wasn't just there to slack off, but I was there knowing that I had an end date in mind. But I didn't know what I wanted to do in the future. And today I'm making a podcast, and this is not something that I never thought I would be doing a year before. But I feel very fulfilled knowing and just trying to explore and just kind of seeing, okay, does this make sense? For every day I can at least tell myself I'm learning a little bit about what I want to do. Well, at Amazon for that last year in Japan, I was just kind of, trying to find ways to reason with myself that I could stay there. And then of course there's the relationship stuff. I had problems with a relationship in the Bay Area, and I kind of, I left the Bay Area, and I actually thought putting that distance would help me end that relationship. When looking back, I didn't think I actually wanted to end it, but I wanted to just kind of escape and put distance out there, and that was very difficult for me. And it took a lot of introspection to really understand how I really felt. I had to learn in some way, and this is kind of a hard way, but I still learned it. So I just tie that all the way back to Lost in Translation, because you look at Bill Murray and you look at Scarlett Johansson, they're also going through similar problems. They don't know what they want to do with their job. They're either going through the motions with Bill Murray taking some whiskey ad deal for some money, or Scarlett doesn't even know what she wants to do. And then they both have relationship troubles. They both aren't sure if their partners are who they want for the foreseeable future, or they're just kind of getting maybe a little sick of it. So, and long story short, all I'm trying to say is that you can definitely spend your whole life in Japan and Tokyo and not really address those problems. And you can easily pass years and years and years doing that without really figuring out what you want for yourself. And I think you have to really take the time to explore how you feel about your relationships with your work and your loved ones. And I don't think being an expat can solve that, but it doesn't mean you can't answer those questions while you are an expat. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot to unpack there, man, and I think you made some really good points. I think the whole relationship piece within the movie is very interesting too, and I'm glad we looped back to the movie because I kind of wanted to touch on this as well. But there's that Tokyo also has, I don't know what it is about the city, and I think maybe it's like a mixture of the cultural aspects of people not really talking to strangers, things like that, but also this idea that, I don't know, people can feel a bit cold at first. That's not to say Japanese people are not friendly, but they're not necessarily, in Tokyo specifically, outgoing in the sense of like making you feel very welcome either. And so I think like there's this aspect too when you first arrive here of feeling very, very lonely and isolated for a multitude of reasons. I kind of touched on some earlier. And I think in the movie it's really interesting because it's this whole feeling of like being isolated, but also like feeling like you're learning about yourself, and it's just, I think that combination of things that's happening at the same time. It's like, for example, in the movie, Scarlett's character, she's married, but she's very young. I think they're freshly married, if I remember right. Yeah. But then she's having this whole feeling of like she actually doesn't know who her husband is anymore. She feels very confused, like she doesn't understand. And then Bill Murray's character, he's been married for a very long time. I think he's been married for, I think they say like 20 years, something like that. Yeah. Long time. He's got kids. Yeah. And his situation is very different. Like his wife is sending him things regarding like remodeling the house and like very domestic affairs in which they're taking care of. But he also, you can tell, is feeling very fed up with it. And there's a lack of any sort of excitement or maybe even a lack of that a love that you probably initially feel when you first meet somebody that's there anymore.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think they're both kind of like figuring things out. And what's interesting about Tokyo is like, for whatever reason, because you can explore and wander, you have more time to have these introspective experiences. So, yeah, man, I mean, you know, going back to the whole relationship thing for you, and then I've had my own relationship troubles in terms of after moving to Japan and even being in Japan. I don't know. It's interesting, right? And I often think about this too, and I don't know if you've thought about it. I wonder if, because we're kind of on this escape, right?
Yeah.
And we're still learning about ourselves, but it does help you understand what's more important. Like when you step out of this, so like when I do leave, and since you already have, I'm kind of interested to hear what your feeling around this is now. Does that stuff kind of come back? Like you're like, okay, I'm no longer in Japan. I'm no longer on this gap. I know what's important to me. Can I fix what I had before if that's still what you want, whatever it may be?
I mean, I think you're right. Japan just is a whole nother universe. And
Yeah.
I came back and I did try to fix that relationship, and it didn't work out. But I think part of it was that I thought Japan could be, like it just felt like it could start anew. When I deep down didn't really want to start anew. I wanted to figure out how this could work, and ultimately I decided that like I wanted to get this to work. And although it didn't work out, I'm glad that I came to that conclusion. And yeah, you had a significant other that came to Japan with you eventually, and then my significant other did not. And so, that's kind of mirrored in the two Bill and Scarlett relationships, where Bill's wife was out in LA, and then her husband was, in Japan at the same time. But even if it's distance, whether it's emotional distance or physical distance, you sometimes get to feel like you're drifting apart, even though you're navigating these like really crazy, strange waters that are so different, and you're changing a lot, and then you're like, well, we had come as a package, but like we're all kind of drifting apart in different ways because of, the currents are pushing us in different ways.
I often wonder too, like when I step out of Japan, like what's going to happen to me? Am I going to, some of the things that I discovered about myself, will it be that I enjoyed them because I was in Japan, or was it actually something that I personally really enjoyed? I don't know. It's kind of hard to say. One more thing I wanted to touch on about the movie quickly too, before we move on, is when I rewatched it in preparation for the podcast, I watched it with a friend of mine who's a girl, and she focuses in very much on the cheating aspect too that kind of happens, because I think it's very easy to romanticize what happens in the movie. But there is an aspect of cheating that is happening, and I think that's pretty interesting. A pretty interesting observation, because when I first watched it, it's very easy to be like, oh, this is like very romantic, whatever's happening is happening.
Yeah, you're right.
But at the same time, it's like, in reality, they're actually kind of cheating on other people. And so I think that's like an interesting thing. I think you and I were texting about it too, and you called out something where, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the movie, but Bill sleeps with this woman who's like a singer in the hotel.
Yeah.
And the way that plays out kind of makes it feel like Bill has probably done that before.
Seems like it.
Yeah, so it's hard to say. And then the last thing I want to tack on quickly too about the movie, again, because I watched it with someone who is a woman, and this is actually still weird for me sometimes when I watch it. The age gap between the two of them is kind of a little strange. Because at first it seems like they're just becoming friends, and maybe he's going to be like a father figure. But then there's also like clearly like more feelings that are building. And so it's just a little interesting. The person who I watched it with actually did not like how the movie ended. Because of that, she felt that in some ways maybe Bill was abusing his like father figure.
Interesting.
Should he have done what he did? Like, he is significantly older than Scarlett is in the movie. I think Scarlett Johansson's like, she's got to be like 20.
I think she's like in her late teens when she got casted, maybe. I don't know. It's very young.
Maybe you're right.
Very
Yeah,
young.
'cause, I mean, her character's out of college, but I think she's actually younger than that in reality.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
whereas Bill Murray is like, I think he's probably
He's 50.
Is he 50?
He's at
at
least
that point?
50.
Yeah. So it's like there's a pretty large age gap there. So that's
Totally.
like an interesting thing too.
No, it's good to bring up. You're right. We do romanticize that a lot, and you know, it's all. Honestly, I kind of sometimes I feel like I fell into like those kind of narrative traps too. You know, it's like, no, you'll find the one. It doesn't matter what the other happens to the other person. It's like, well, actually, it does matter. Like, you know, like his wife and her husband, like those were people.
They have kids too.
Yeah, like
yeah.
you know, and I mean, honestly, I don't think I think it's a lot about they're just two lost souls and they're like fighting their way, and like it's like a pretty strong connection at this point. I don't think it would have worked out for those two. I don't believe that they're like soulmates. So it's almost
No, I feel the same. I kind of when I was talking with the person I watched the movie about a little bit too, I made similar points in that I think it's more like this moment in time was important to both of them, but like in reality, if you and this goes back to what I was saying before, if you remove the factor of being in Tokyo, like that would probably significantly change things. And I think in reality, that would never work with the two of them, and that quote unquote romance probably would have never flourished in the same way.
Yeah, which I think makes it even worse in some way, where it's like you're throwing away in Bill's case, like a very long-term marriage because you're like not very happy and you met some 20-year-old and you know you're just like everything becomes all romanticized in this maybe 10-day experience.
Right.
So yeah, throwing some cold water on it, but sometimes you need that because life is kind of like that sometimes, right?
Yes.
You don't want to lose sight of what you've worked so hard about, and I think I've definitely had felt that way in the past before, where I've let these romantic narratives kind of carry me away. So good points, good points there. I wish they were had stayed in Japan a little longer or something like that. I don't know, but I guess it is still the most relatable movie for a Japanese expat around, and probably won't have something that will be any better in the foreseeable future unless we make something ourselves. We'll see. But okay, this is another part that I wanted to finish with, is a little bit more lighthearted part. And if you guys who have been frequent listeners of the show, you'll seen that in our episode 20, we created a map of restaurant recommendations from San Francisco because we talked about Padma Lakshmi's Taste the Nation in our San Francisco Chinatown episode. In that episode, if you're interested in checking out the restaurants we mentioned, they're all on Google Maps. To add to that, we wanted to share some of our knowledge about the hidden spots that we love in Japan. And Tokyo, I think, is really interesting, and actually Japan at large, because obviously there's the language barrier. So if you don't know how to read Japanese, you're not going to be able to find all the stuff you want on Google. It's just not going to happen. Okay.
Yeah, it's true.
And even if you do read Japanese, there's a lot of stuff that's hidden. They either just don't want to publicize it that much. They don't want to make it. They don't care that much about making it the biggest thing around. Or there's just a lot of niche interests, and so you'll find a lot of hidden things that you're always wanting to explore. And this kind of goes back to a little bit of what I talked about, why I wanted to be in Tokyo. I wanted to get this expert about all these different things about Tokyo, and I made a lot of effort to do that. And I'm glad I did. I'm glad I really made the most of my time. What I really realized is like I'll never ever find all the places I want in Tokyo. It's just not gonna ever happen.
It's impossible.
It's impossible. Yeah. Even if I, became a local, spoke fluent Japanese, married someone that's local, it's just not gonna happen. Like it's not gonna happen.
They don't even know. Not everyone knows that
knows.
you're.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like a lot of our friends who are Japanese, Tokyo citizens, they're like, how do you know about these places? It's because we did our research, And so before we kind of share some of the places, I want wanted to share a little bit about how we approach that process, because I think the process can be translated across different countries or cities. Firstly, these are the 3 tips I would give anyone if they want to be an expat and want to really master a city. 1, start a Google Maps bookmarks page. If you haven't done that, that's the number 1 most important thing. And that's just because stuff comes up on Google Maps that is harder to find by text search. So you'll just be looking at your Google Maps, about places you're interested in, and then something nearby will pop up, like some kind of bar that's not listed, and you're like, what is that? And you'll try to check it out. And if you just are very studious about pinning things, you will eventually map out a little like region for yourself, and be able to find spots that you might not necessarily were able to find before. 2 is just be methodical about searching on Google. So if one day you're interested in the best hot pot in Tokyo, just look up top 5 hot pot places in Tokyo, and then just bookmark every single place that you are interested in. If you do that for like top 5 jazz bars, top 5, like hip hop clubs, something like that, like you'll eventually pepper your map with enough places that you can then go on and explore once you're out and about in the city. And then third of all is follow small places on Instagram, follow DJs that you like, because Instagram is a big marketing driver for a lot of the nightlife in Tokyo. Some places you won't find on Google, you'll find on Instagram, and then if you follow the right people, then you'll know where they go to, and then you'll look at their stories and you'll see, these are interesting places, and you can check them out yourself. How did that sound? Anything I missed?
No, I think those are great tips. I mean, I think we want to go into some of the process that you and I both did. We can talk about that. I think, the last one, Instagram, actually, for me, it's become one of the biggest discovery tools that I think I use today.
Yeah.
And I think if you really get into like learning how to use it for discovery, like in terms of like tagging locations or finding the people that are in the know in Tokyo or whoever, right?
Yeah.
Like you can call them influencers if you want. Some of them are maybe just people that are well known or like know the city and they happen to live here for a long time.
Yeah.
Like even in some cases, like we'll talk about these bars later, but the people who own and kind of establish these businesses here,
True,
some of them kind of become like I don't know what's the word I'm looking for. They just become like entrepreneurs in terms of like setting up new bars over time.
Yeah.
And so like you can also learn from them in terms of when they, 1, open up a new bar or a restaurant, and 2, they are probably connected with other people like them in Tokyo, and so they'll call out other places that are very similar.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, those are big. And then I think maybe one more tip I would tack on is if there's any local blog sites that are good for like helping you identify new places and exciting things to do. In Tokyo, there's a ton of websites. I can start listing. Tokyo Weekender is one. Time Out Tokyo is really good.
Yeah.
Some of those blog type sites are really good and have people that have been here for a long time and good about highlighting things that you can try, explore, and do. So
those are all good. I would still say though, like just asking people that you meet is probably even the best one still.
For sure.
Yeah, because
it's a lot of word of mouth here.
It's all word of mouth. Word of mouth is huge. And if you just figure out, someone you meet, you hear a little bit about their interests. If they're interested in a certain type of music, you just ask them, what is your like 3 places you want to go to? You go to, and put them on your map. Boom, you got that. And I don't know. For me, it was like the biggest hobby I had in Tokyo. And why don't I start sharing my screen now just to show how big of an obsession I had with it. I'm going to go first on my maps. And this is, unfortunately, guys, this treasure trove will not be all shared with you guys immediately. We might get to most of these places eventually. But let's just say in my 1 year, I had a little bit of an obsession with Google Maps and pinning. And most of the greens are places, if I heard of a place, boom, it's on the map. If the pink ones are my favorite places, but so a lot of the places I visited, I didn't put on pink. I just didn't get organized with it. But I definitely became quite obsessed with finding out the best place in Tokyo. And of course, I live in the west side, so you see more density here. This is where you'll see Shibuya, Harajuku, Meguro, Ebisu. The Ginza areas and Akihabara, that kind of area on the east side, I was less familiar with. So Tokyo is so big. Like, there's so many places I haven't explored yet. But let's just share some of these with you. So, Mike, switching over to our podcast map, I'll start out first. And let's go with non-nightlife places first. The places you can just go. It's not about drinking, not about music. It's like, or maybe it's about music, but not about like, going out at night, right? For anyone out there, people of all ages and all, non-alcoholics too. I'll start out first with one place I really like, and that's 2121 Design Site. 2121 Design Site is a design museum in Tokyo. It is designed by my favorite architect, Ando Tadao. He is, as you can see, quite a minimalistic contemporary designer, loves exposed concrete. Obviously the exhibits always rotate, so you'll see some different stuff, but even the architecture itself is beautiful. And it's quite smack dab in the middle of the city, so you can hit up a couple of different, I think Mori Art Museum, which is much more famous, is nearby. This is near Roppongi.
It's near Roppongi Hills, right?
Yeah, it's near Roppongi Hills.
Yeah.
But this is quite lesser known, but it's still beautiful.
Yeah, I've actually not been here. This is cool.
You should check it out.
Yeah, even I'm discovering things today.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's definitely a hidden gem. So, the Suntory Museum of Art is also nearby. Nogizaka, the National Art Center, is also quite a nice art. There's a lot of art museums in Tokyo, both huge ones and new contemporary ones, and we'll talk about some more later. But this is the first pin I'm putting down on my favorites here. Anything for you, Mike?
We talked about it earlier before the show. I mean, we can call out, a lot of people come to Japan and know Japan for its clothing and fashion and things of that sort. I'm a big sneaker guy. There's plenty of sneaker stores within Tokyo. One of the ones that we were talking about before, this is more of a reselling shop to find the rare sneakers that drop, called Worm, and that's out in the Harajuku area. So that one's pretty cool. I think we've wandered through it before.
Yeah.
It's kind of insane how many different sneakers they have in there, and some of them are like pretty old in terms of like the collection that's going on. So that one's really cool. I mean, in this one, you could also just say within Harajuku, like there's plenty of cool shops and fashion and within those like back alley streets. I definitely highly recommend anyone just wander around through the thrift shops there. Thrifting in Japan is like one of the best places to do it because everything's usually in very well kept condition. The people in those shops, they curate what's coming in, and so they're very selective. And so like if you find a shop that aligns with like the interests that you have in terms of clothing and fashion, like you're gonna find some really cool shit there.
Absolutely. You're a total expert at as a sneakerhead, so you guys should definitely listen.
I'm an expert, but I strive.
You're definitely an expert, and you're totally right about thrifting. Japanese people are very, very they're experts at keeping things in prime condition. I know, as someone who got into film photography, I bought a couple of cameras in Japan, and they are in great condition. And thrift shopping is the same thing. Thrift shopping is actually a huge trend in Japan, and you will find high quality stuff at very good prices there. So Worm Tokyo is a great one. I remember going with you there. I bought one of my hats, I think around here as well. There's a bunch of cool places around here. That whole area, Jingumai. I'm gonna have us walk a little bit down to Nanzuka Underground.
Sticking with the art theme, I see.
Yeah. This is one of my favorite galleries. It is a very small one. It's near Shibuya, but it's kind of on it's not near the main nightlife. It's a little bit up a hill, and I think near a hotel. But it's a really small museum. It's about like maybe 3 little rooms, and they have some really cool art there. Some of the newest and best I forgot what this guy's name is. The guy who does the Pokemon, like the.
It's Daniel Arsham, I think.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
saying his last name wrong.
So
Yeah.
he had an exhibit recently. I've seen a lot of great stuff here. Just they're a great Instagram follow as well.
Yep.
And it's a secret
Some
little
Hajime
spot.
Sorayama.
Yeah. So check that place out. It's one of many, many secret galleries in Japan, but definitely one that is not too much out of the way. So great for a lot of people to pop in their heads while they're shopping or out in Shibuya. How about number 2 for you, Mike?
Man, I don't know if this is on your list, but I'll call it out. The Daikanyama tea site is pretty cool.
Daikanyama tea site.
So it's this really like well designed bookstore that not only has books, but there's like a lot of like magazines, catalogs, and then even smaller like pop-up style things within the shop where they have clothing or anything really. It's a cool place to pop in, look around. Yeah, I don't know. And then nearby, there's a lot of other shops that are very cool. Daikanyama is a bit of a bougie area, but it's fun to wander about and see what's out there.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up. It wasn't on my list, but I tell a lot of people to go here as well. It is one of the most beautiful bookstores I've ever been to in the world. And I fucking love bookstores, okay? I honestly, and yes, it is bougie, but the reason why I lived in that area was because I wanted to be close to this bookstore because I fucking love this place.
Really? That was your driver? You wanted to be in Daikanyama for the tea site?
It was,
Wow.
seriously, because I fucking wanted to come here. This specific cafe, which is like one of the best places to read a book in the world. And I was just like, I want to be here all the time. In the end, I'm also lazy and I didn't leave my house as much as I wanted to. But you got a lot of, this is a top 3 reading places in the world. But they also have a great magazine collection. And although a lot of people are like, magazines, who reads those now? You have a lot of really cool kind of indie magazines, a lot of like fashion, art, stuff that's very visual, that it's harder to really portray on digital, or it just feels better in your hands. You can kind of see it here. So T-Side is definitely a place. And they also have some like an event space, which lets people like create different events there. So there's like sometimes like used furniture. What is going on with my... Why is my Google Maps so buggy? That's weird.
Maybe just refresh it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Anyways, so there's an event space right here. People have they sell like used furniture here, or there's like random stuff
it's always
going
changing.
on. Yeah. There's sometimes they hold like little like street vendors around here. This is a really bougie brunch spot that people like to take dates to. I've never done that myself personally.
It's pretty Takai.
Yeah, but it is. It's a nice area. And you're right. If you go down this street right here, all these little hidden alleys, there's a bunch of cool little shops there. So definitely one of my favorite little pieces in my neighborhood. My third place is going to be what's it called here? It is here. It is in Design Fest. No, I'll do Body and Soul. So my third place is Body and Soul Club. Sticking with going to a more of a music theme actually. Body and Soul is a great jazz bar. I've been there a couple times. Each time I've been blown away. You can sit right, it's got great locations. You can pretty much sit right in front of the musicians, and they've got some great artists there. It's a great vibe. And
where's this one at?
It's in Roppongi. Oh,
it's in Roppongi. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I've not been here either.
Yeah. I've seen some great pianists and bassists, and then afterwards you can talk to the people there. It's owned by an old couple. I think they're like in their 70s. You get a little bit of a different crowd than if you go to your typical bars and clubs. So if you want a different little vibe on a night out, this is the place to go. This is the jazz bar to go to.
Nice.
Mike, what's your third non nightlife, well, non uh, bar club area.
I'm gonna call out this really cool shop that I don't know if it could exist anywhere else in the world. It's a cassette shop. It's the
Ooh,
weirdest thing
yeah,
that
yeah.
it's called Waltz.
Waltz.
Yeah, and it's one of the most aesthetically pleasing shops that I've ever been in. Again, it's just strange though because we're talking about cassette tapes, which are from the '80s, but they sell them, and there are people that are very into them. Just like vinyl's big now, but this is one that's very unique in that it's cassettes only. But I love going in here and looking at the cassettes, and then also I really love that they kind of archive and find old school boom boxes and like '80s
Ooh, that's so
electronics. Like you
cool.
can kind of see in the back of the picture there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love this place. I want to draw as much attention to it so it does not die out because it's to me it's one of the coolest things.
Dude, I lived nearby. I never got to go there. It was on my bookmarks, but now I'm like really envious that I didn't, or really pissed at myself that I didn't check it out. These are these Walkmans?
You gotta come back through.
Oh man.
Yeah, they have Walkmans. Yeah, dude, it's pretty cool.
Sick.
Yeah, and I'm kind of going back to what we were talking about before. You know, even with thrifting and stuff like that. This may be a broad statement and you know whatever, but it's just interesting in Japan. Like I would argue that Japanese people sometimes are some of the best archivists in the world in terms of whatever their personal interests are.
Yeah.
And this is like a great example. Like whoever owns this shop clearly loves cassette tapes and classic boombox audio. So yeah, like I don't know if this would actually work anywhere else. I don't know.
I mean, you know, it's
maybe New York City. I don't know.
maybe New York. I feel like a couple of cities it would work in, but it's definitely so appreciated for people like you and me. And I think more and more people, we're inundated with so much choice nowadays that sometimes you just want a great curator that has presented things in a really beautiful way and it really goes deep into a niche because it's so easy to go broad nowadays. So great call
These
out.
guys are experts on whatever it is they like, and they add their personal touch to it, which is usually it can work out really well.
Yeah, and there's so many of these different types of places in Japan, in Tokyo, like pretty random interests, but they make it so interesting, compelling for you to go check it out and maybe buy something.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, well, let's go into our expertise, really, which is drinks. Where are we drinking, Mike? Where are we drinking? Give us a drinking place. Give us a bar.
Where are we starting the night?
Yeah.
Man, there's so many places where to go. I think I'll call out Beat Cafe in Shibuya.
Beat Cafe.
I think.
Did you or did you not meet Post Malone there? Is that what the rumors were saying?
They're true. They are true. Maybe I'll share that picture for the podcast. I don't know.
Yeah.
I ran into Post Malone in this bar, and I Mac DeMarco, for those who know who Mac DeMarco is. It was the funniest experience I've ever had. I remember walking in and I'm looking around and I see him in the corner, and I turn to my friend like, "Yo, is that Post Malone?" And then there's like these people sitting at the bar, and I think they were just part of his posse or whatever, and they just kind of look and I'm like, "Yeah, that's him." I was like, "Holy shit!" He's kind of hard to miss given the face tattoos and the hair. So. I got a picture with him. He probably does not remember meeting me because he was pretty drunk, but still a cool experience nonetheless.
Yeah, it's a great place. It's a great hangout place. I think I think we usually try to like start our night around that.
It's a very a lot of foreigners will come here, and it's a very classic dive bar. But I think like where it's a little bit hidden away, and if you don't know it's there, it's kind of cool. And the guy who owns the place, who is in one of these pictures here.
Right.
He's a pretty cool dude. Yeah, like he seems to know a lot of people. People come through there all the time, and so it's a good spot. Nice to hang out in. It can get pretty full and pretty busy, but definitely check it out.
Yeah, you have to walk down these stairs. It's kind of hard to really. Again, this is one more pro tip. Just don't be afraid to just walk down blind alleys and weird basements in Japan to figure out where to find your place because it'll be on the map.
Nondescript.
Yeah. You'll be on. You'll look at your map and be like, "This place. Where is this place?" Just walk down the stairs. It looks like it's not there, but it's there. Trust me, it's gonna be there.
Also, the fact that the door is covered in graffiti and the handle is literally a bar mop top. It's just like hilarious.
That's honestly adds the attraction for me. Honestly, I'd
Yeah,
say
I know.
that.
Me too. I remember I was just like, "What? This is the door handle?" Okay.
Yeah, it's a good way to like really set the tone of being in Tokyo. I like that one. I like that one. I am going to add in. Let me think here. Which one should I go with? I will go with Debris.
Good call. Always a good one.
Debris is about 25-minute walk from Beat Cafe, near Daikanyama Tea Site. It's in my neighborhood, and Debris is a little bit. I mean, it's a newer place. It's a little less dingy than Beat Cafe, but it really captures that like hidden bar feel because you go down the stairs, you open up a book. You're actually okay. So let me just see if I can have a picture of this actually.
Yeah, I'd actually argue that it's less a bar and more of like one of these unique small clubs in Tokyo. Like,
Yeah,
when I say club has like for some people it's a derogatory word. Like they're already turned off by the idea that it's a club.
totally,
But
totally.
maybe lounge is better. It's pretty cool. It's pretty unique.
Yeah, exactly. I think anywhere else in the world, if I said let's go clubbing, you look at me like, dude, you're 31. Like, what are you doing? But it's
Yeah.
totally different. I don't want to go to these like super clubs anymore. I'm not trying to get a table. You're just at a small venue. It's usually like one room, maybe two rooms max, and you're like, and it's just good music being played, and it's not pretentious at all. So, Japanese clubs. I mean, you can find that too in Tokyo if you really wanted to go there. But for people
Yeah, of
who have
course.
I would say more discerning tastes. You can find that in clubs in Tokyo. But Debris is literally, so you're on the street. This is the main street of Daikanyama. And you see a sign, so it's not trying to hide itself. This is a Debris sign. You go down these stairs and you're confronted with like a Chinese restaurant, basically. It's like a little stall. What you do is you open the bookcase. Let me see if I have I wonder if I have any. They have a bookcase thing here. Do they have a bookcase? They don't. Okay, so you open the bookcase, you press the button, and oh, here it is. Oh no, that's not it. You open the bookcase, you press the button, and then the bookcase opens up, and then you can go inside this little one-room bar, and you get this beautiful bar with cool neon signs. They infuse their liquor with their own herbs. They have a little bit like Chinese herbal medicine cabinets going on here. Some of the cocktails are pretty interesting. Some of it's not really, they're not trying to fuck you up, And also you can order congee while you're drinking, which is awesome. Always a great thing. So, oh yeah, we remember this. We had the seahorse drink, right? Seahorse.
We did the rattlesnake.
Oh, we
I
did
thought.
rattlesnake.
It was some kind of that one was intense.
Didn't we do like a whale thing, like a whale's?
We also did the seal liquor.
Seal liquor. Yeah,
which
yeah.
is aphrodisiac the right word?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think
so. Yeah, basically gets you ready to see all the seals.
But yeah, Debris is it's one room, and follow them on Instagram. Sometimes you'll have artists come in. They'll be painting on the walls. There's some cool art in the bathroom. It's a great design. It's a kind of a pretty communal place. People will just like talk to you, come up to you and be like, hey, how'd you find out this place? Like, who are you? Stuff like that. So, good vibes all around. Okay, Mike, number 2 for you. What's it going to be?
I'm going to go with Bloody Angle.
Bloody Angle. Great choice
Yes.
as well.
Yes,
Bloody
this is a good
Angle.
one.
Right next to BCAF. Oh no, this is a different Bloody Angle, huh? Did they?
That's a new one. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
that's the Dogenzaka one. The original one is on the.
Here you go.
Yeah. That's the one. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean this one like, it's actually not that flashy. I think it's more just the vibe that's going on in here. I mean, they have these cool neon signs.
Yeah.
It's up a couple flights of stairs, hidden away, and what is basically it seems like a residential building, which is again just strange, being from America.
It's like
also
on the 4th floor here or something. It's up this tower, random.
Yeah. Also, warning to those who go up and down these stairs in the rain: be careful. I slipped and fell down them. So, yeah, you could probably blame the drinks on that. But anyway, the bar itself is like really fun. This is going back to like some of the curation that we talk about. Like this is one of those cool Tokyo record bars that I love. Like every time I come in here, they're always playing some cool music. A lot of the time, it's stuff that you can't even find online. There's been stuff that I've heard here that is Japanese specific, and for those that don't know, in Japan, streaming is still not really like a major platform. A lot of people still like to buy physical media, and so like I've heard just stuff that I don't know if I'll ever be able to find it. And so yeah, it's just a good vibe all around. Really enjoy it. Nice place to kind of start the night, get a little warmed up, and then go to other spots.
As someone who is really into photography, the like cool pink
Lighting's on point.
really makes for great pictures. So
Yeah.
check that out there. It's a great place. One of my favorite bars as well. It's again, yeah, it's a little bit hidden, brings you into the whole mystique of Tokyo. Has great music, not pretentious at all. It's just like a cool hangout spot. And I believe I think you told me like the owner has also a couple more bars, right? So it's another person that's like, if you follow the owner of the Bloody and Go bar, you'll get to know a couple more spots on the way.
Yep, he's got a few other places around Tokyo that are pretty cool.
Nice.
We'll save those for another day.
My next place will be Takyu Lounge. And Takyu Lounge, I'm going to go with a different vibe here. So we've gone to a lot of really cool vibes. Neon, dark, we're all cool. This is like your living. This is like if you want to go drink in your living room, you go here.
Is this the ping pong bar?
This is the ping pong bar. Not many places, not many people have living rooms in Japan, Tokyo, right? It's a small place, a lot of crowded apartments. So these guys just made their own like hangout place. It is like, it's super warm. It's also hidden as well, so it's got that interesting experience to it. But it's more of a place you would go when you're like after work with your coworkers, right? For a couple pints, and you go in. You gotta take off your shoes, and you just gotta chill on these couches, and you can play ping pong there too. I believe they have a couple locations around Japan, but this is like they have their own ping pong like team and stuff, so they try to take it pretty seriously, but it's got good vibes all around. The food's pretty good. I remember the fried chicken, I think, is pretty good there. Karaage.
Yep, solid karaage.
You can drink some good beers here, and it's in a pretty awesome location like Nakameguro. You're just around this whole area. You've got a number of nice restaurants and bars as well. So it's near this river. If you're there around Sakura season, it'll also be very beautiful but very packed. Great vibes, great place.
Yeah, no, good call out. I guess we're doing 3, right? Is that what we're doing?
Yep.
I'm gonna go a little out of the city a bit. Well, it's still in Tokyo, but like it's a little off the beaten path. I'm gonna call out a place called Tiko, which is in an area of called Koenji. So for those who can and want to, like, I highly recommend going along the Chuo line. I think is what it is, that goes out to Koenji, Kichijoji.
How'd you spell that again?
Tiko.
Tiko.
Tico.
All right. Okay. Yeah.
Yep. This whole area, like, very off the beaten path, but very cool bars all around. Tiko itself is underneath the station, so there's like a tunnel where there's, I guess, what would you call it, like a yokocho almost?
Yeah,
and
a little bit.
You walk through, and this bar is under there, and basically it's like a small little place, and they do a lot of infused liquors, stuff like that. I remember trying a bunch of stuff that was just I hadn't seen before. Like they'll have like a tequila that's infused with I don't know, apples, whatever. I can't remember exactly, but cool spot. But I mean, even if you're out at Tico, I highly recommend wandering around nearby the station because there's a lot of cool little bars, and it'll give you some similar vibes to Golden Guy, but with a more local feel, a lot less gaijin. I do forewarn you, you will probably need to know some Japanese to get by in some of these spots, or it'll definitely help you. Whereas in Golden Guy, you're fine if you don't know any Japanese.
You learn just some Japanese. You want access to place in Tokyo, at least learn a little bit of Japanese. It's important.
Make the effort. It goes a long way.
It goes a long, long way. And I also encourage people to just actually read the reviews for Google Maps because usually I'm like, who cares about what they say? But sometimes they'll even help you like find the location, which is really important, or like help you know what to order. So important in Japan and other places where you don't speak the language.
Yep.
I will Close it off with Just Another Agency, which doubles as Barry. This is probably my favorite bar in Tokyo, and that's because one, checks off a couple things. One, it is in the most random. It is the most quintessential secret area you can find, right? This building has no marks. There are no signs in this building.
No, there's nothing on it.
You have no idea that if you open this door right here, and then you walk up a couple flight of stairs, there's a really cool bar located on the second floor. And
also, when you walk in, it's a little jarring because you look around and it looks almost like an abandoned building. Like it could potentially be like a cracked in. You don't know.
Totally. If you were in another country, you might be afraid of your life. And what is awesome about this place is that it is kind of a neighborhood hangout. And it's very unassuming. It's very it's a little divey. It's just a couple guys who have, I think, three, they're non-Japanese guys. I think one of them might be half Japanese. They own this place, they run it, and just like their friends and people that found this place kind of hang out there and end up there at the end of the night. So oftentimes I'll go there and I will see people that I know from just being outside in the nightlife that come from Shibuya or Roppongi or whatever, and they just want to end up here. And it's great to just meet everyone and see familiar faces. So I came here for my birthday. And sometimes, it's a great place. You can just actually, I think Mike, you had mentioned like sometimes it's not really easy to talk to Japanese people or Tokyo people. But I feel like in Barrie, you can kind of come up to people and talk to them. A lot of Europeans are here. But also local Japanese people. And if possible, sometimes they open up at the third floor, which can be more of a clubby environment as well. So great vibes all around.
I second everything you said. It's a cool spot. Also, it's one of the bigger bars that you can find in Tokyo where if you have a group of people, you can usually find some space to hang out.
True. Yeah. That's a good point.
Which is space is hard to come by in Tokyo.
The bathroom is also really cool. I randomly really care about the bathroom because
shout out bathroom.
Cool. I care a lot about that. But yeah, just a little taste, guys, for all the listeners out there. These are places I would take all my friends to come to visit. So hopefully it's a little bit more of a gem for you guys. And then another added benefit for listening to the Electric Image Express is our recommendations from all of our friends around the world about places that they took their time to research. So please, when you visit, be respectful of the areas and hope you enjoy them. Mike, thank you for sharing your expertise and for coming back on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Always a good time.
If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or please reach out to us on Instagram or Twitter. We didn't get any sponsorships from these places, by the way, so this is just our passion. We're not promoting these places for payment. But thanks everyone again for listening. I hope you enjoyed this visual episode of the Electric Image Express, and we'll see you guys next week.
Matane.
All right, cool.
Do I hit the record button to stop? Oh, stop. Okay.